Hi, Jason here with Two Sides of Fi. Today we're going to be talking about our brand new rebalancing calculator. If you've seen our recent episode, Stock Market on Fire, What We're Doing in a Downturn, you'll remember that we talked about asset allocation and rebalancing a decent amount, and there's some great links to resources in that episode, so be sure to check it out if you haven't watched it lately. When you obtain your copy, you're going to start on the README tab, and that's what we see here. And perhaps most importantly, this is just a reminder of where you can find this quick start video that we're talking through right now. There's the link. Here's the calculator. This is where you're going to be spending most of your time using the tool because this is where all of the calculations are done. We'll come back to that in a moment. The next is the instructions tab. This is meant to be a supplement to what you're getting in this video here and has specific guidance on individual aspects of the calculator, and you can always return to it as a reference. What you'll see is there are a number of direct links in blue, and those will help you navigate quickly around the tool, and it also will refer you to some specific references that you might find useful. Next, we have the example tab. You may have noticed that this is an exact duplicate of where the calculator tab starts, and that's intentional. This isn't a place for you to be working, but rather, this is here for a reference. So just be aware that it's here in case you make a lot of changes and you'd like to see where things started. Here we have the background tab. This is simply a list of references to previous Two Sides of Fi episodes, including the one I mentioned at the start of this video. These contain helpful information that you might find useful as you consider this topic, particularly if you're new to asset allocation and rebalancing. They're ordered with the newest at the top and the oldest on the bottom. Lastly, just a reminder, Eric and I aren't your financial advisors. Our aim here is to help you be better informed, equipped DIYers to work with your own portfolio, and asset allocation and rebalancing is just one aspect of that. If you have specific questions about your own portfolio, seek out professional resources. The calculator is where you're going to be spending most of your time. Let's start with some tips for success. First, and most importantly, only edit the cells highlighted in yellow. Everything else will calculate automatically. This is meant to be really simple. If you find that things get really messed up and the calculations no longer work, don't panic. You can simply copy a new version of the calculator using the link that you're going to receive when you request the tool. So, nothing is ever irretrievably lost. Second, if you have any questions as you use the tool, see the instructions tab. There's more details in there, and there's probably going to be the answer that you're seeking. Between that and this video, you should have everything you need to be successful with the tool. All right, let's get started with the calculator. As I mentioned, everything in yellow here is meant to be entered by you. And so let's walk through how we might do that. So what I'm starting with here is how the tool arrives to you in the first place. It has this simple portfolio with 5 different funds and a cash position. And those are shown here in column B with the names of the funds and column C in the value of those funds. Now, importantly, that's the value across all of your accounts. So if you have retirement accounts like Roths and traditional IRAs, a brokerage account, you'll want to account for the sum of all of those things. And so the first suggestion I have for you is to use something that allows you to easily aggregate those assets. Many people use personal capital, like Eric and I do. We find this a very simple solution to do this. If you'd like to check out that tool and you haven't used it before, just go to twosidesoffi.com/personalcapital. That tool is totally free. However, you may also use something like your brokerage. If you're at Fidelity or Vanguard, they have screens where you can see your aggregate asset allocation. That's another way that you could do this. And lastly, you could do it manually. You could download summaries from each of your accounts, especially if you have multiple brokerages. This is one way to do it, and then you'll aggregate them. And this is described in the instructions tab. But again, personal capital represents a simple solution that many people like to use. Once you've compiled your assets, you're going to enter them in this tool. Let's assume that this represents your portfolio, but if it didn't and you had many more funds, you would simply enter them in here, and then you would add the total dollar amount. And what you'll see is, as you do that, column D will reflect the current asset allocation, which will sum up to 100% for your portfolio. The next thing you need to do is establish your targets, and this is, what is the asset allocation that you want to maintain? So this is kind of the heart of the tool, because over time, as your assets change, as they grow or decrease in value, your current asset allocation in column D will reflect that. And the tool will allow you to see how things have drifted from that target amount. So we need to set those targets. And what you'll see here is that we have our targets established. 50% US large cap equity, 10% small cap, and so on, all the way through the 3% cash allocation. Once you've selected your targets, the next thing you need to do is establish your threshold for rebalancing. Shown here in cell E24, the default that we use here is 20%, and this just happens to be what I use. You may choose something different, and this is a topic worth investigating. Again, there's some links on good rebalancing studies in the episode I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Be sure to check those out. What does 20% thresholding mean? Well, let's take a simple example. Our target allocation for US large caps is 50%. And that means that if the value of that changes, relatively speaking, 20% greater or lower, which is equivalent to 40% or 60% of portfolio, the calculator is going to indicate that you may want to consider rebalancing. If we put that in terms of dollars, since we started with a $125,000 value for this asset, you see it here in the target in column G. A low means if it's below $100,000 or above $150,000, rebalancing should be considered. Let's walk through a real example. Here's our alternatives. Let's say that the market went on a tear and our REITs went up to $45,000. You see on the right-hand side of the calculator that things have changed. Column J now indicates rebalancing for this asset, and it suggests you need to sell $18,000 worth of this asset to get back down to your target. So if you want to maintain this 10% target of portfolio, you need to get down to $27,000. Now, it's an individual decision whether you're going to sell down to that target value or something less or something more. But if you're following your investment policy statement, that means that you want to be at least within range. So how do we go about doing this modeling? That's the next step. So column L is provided for you to be able to put in any value you want in here and see the impact of it on your portfolio. So for example, let's assume we want to follow the calculator's advice. So again, here in column K is the recommendation. It shows 18,000 in a red font with parentheses. That means selling is required. And there's a reminder down here below the column that a black font means buying more of an asset is indicated, whereas red font means to sell. Okay, so it's recommending sell 18,000. We're going to sell 18,000, and we're going to do that as a negative 18,000. And there's a reminder below this column. If you want to sell, it's a negative number. And if it's a positive, that's buying. So here we show modeling selling 18,000, and it shows that if you do that, this asset will be back to 10%. Sounds great. Well, hold on a second, because if we sell $18,000 of an asset, now we have $18,000. Many people, if not most, are going to want to redeploy that $18,000 into their portfolio. Well, how would you know that you had extra money, if you will? That's what L27 is for. This tells you what you're required to buy or sell to balance out your portfolio to zero it back out. So buying and selling to zero means that that $18,000 of proceeds you received from selling this asset needs to go somewhere. So maybe you've decided you want to boost your large cap position back up because it's down to 46% currently. So you could just take that $18,000 and buy it here. And as you can see, that is now within range. It's 53%. You'll recall that the boundaries would be 40 to 60% with a 20% threshold. And so now, as you would expect, this cell down here shows $0 required to balance. Of course, you wouldn't be required to spend all of that $18,000 with this fund, if you will. You could take a different approach and buy just $15,000 here, and maybe you've decided you want to increase your international allocation a little bit, so you're going to spend the other, as you can see down here, $3,000 remaining on international. And there you go. So in that case, you're actually closer to your target values of 20% for international, 50% for US large cap. Simple enough, right? So let me show you two more features of this tool. First is the clear column button. If you want to erase all the modeling that you're testing right now and just start fresh, just hit the clear column button. Note that the first time you select this button, or the next one we'll talk about, the tool is going to ask you to authorize the use of macros, and that's just a security feature in Google Sheets. So the first time you use them, you'll see a pop-up asking you to authorize the macros. Do that, and then you'll probably need to press the button again to get it to work. Okay, so that's the clear column button, simple enough. Let's talk about the use defaults button. And in fact, let's use a more complicated portfolio to do that. So we'll put the alternatives back to where they were at 25,000. And now we'll have the market go on a crazy tear. This isn't going to make a lot of sense, but bear with me, where suddenly our large caps go up to $250,000, and that throws off the entire portfolio, right? You can see everything is now out of whack. Okay, well, it's recommending a whole bunch of rebalancing, and that's not surprising given that our biggest position just went on a tear. So we thought it might be useful to make this simple for you, and if you like the suggestions that the calculator is making, right, sell 62,500 of large caps and buy all of these other funds with the proceeds, just hit the Use Defaults button. And it's going to copy everything from column K over into column L, and it will show you being returned back to your target portfolio. So simple enough. Always remember that no matter what happens in the calculator tab, you can always go to the example sheet to see what it's like back at its reset position. So we recommend not working in this sheet. If you'd like, you can protect it. Click this arrow, select Protect Sheet, and then just hit Set Permissions. And you'll be able to keep this tab from being edited. Since this is your local copy, you own it, and we can't set the permissions for you, but this is recommended if you'd like to keep your example sheet intact. Back to the calculator. Okay, so now you've modeled your reallocation. Once you're satisfied with it, you can go off and do your buying and selling required to get your portfolio back to where you want it to be. Once that's done, be sure to come back to the calculator and update the value of those assets in column C to reflect all of the buying and selling. That will make sure that your portfolio is kept up to date. And practices will differ again on how often to do this. Some people will update the sheet quarterly but only do rebalancing annually. Whatever you do, make sure that it's reflected in your investing policy statement. That should be defining what actions you intend to take, and it'll help keep you on track over time. By keeping this sheet updated, it makes it simple when it's time to do rebalancing. Okay, so how do you get your own copy of this tool? Simply go to twosidesoffi.com/rebalancing. That same link is in the description, so you can just click it there. Once you go to that site, you'll see a link to this video. You'll also see a simple form where you can request access to the tool. You do that, you'll receive an email from us with instructions. It'll show you how to copy this to your own Google Drive, and then you'll have your own local copy so that all of your financial data is kept private. Again, if you have any questions over time, return to the video that's shown in the README tab, check out the Instructions tab, and let us know how things go. We hope you get a lot of great use out of this calculator, and we look forward to hearing from you. As always, thanks so much for your support. Eric and I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.